Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our session of Principle of Management. Today, we're covering chapter 13 and 14. Let's begin with chapter 13. Chapter 13 is around motivation. How do we motivate team workers, stakeholders to participate in the company's mission? So, motivation is a function of what you initiate, direction, and persistence. So, it's that direction, persistence, and initiate. So what we look at is how all these things give you this effort and performance. And there is a model, which basically is a job performance equal to motivation times ability times situational constraints. So what you're saying is job performance is how well someone performs the job. Motivation is the effort you put forth on the job, and ability, capability to do the job. Situational constraints or the external factors affecting your performance. So again, all these things make up the idea between effort and performance. So again, just remember, just look at what performance is equal to motivation times ability times situational constraints. Need satisfaction. What is that concept? So needs or basically the physical or psychological requirements must be met to ensure basically survival and well-being of everything. Unmet needs motivate people. So there are three areas and three approaches to this. We're going to focus on only one for this class, and that's Maslow hierarchy of needs for this class. So we're just going to focus on one. So the Maslow hierarchy of needs looked at three different things. It looks at the physiological, the safety, the belongingness, the esteem, and the self-actualization. So if you're thinking of a pyramid or you're thinking of a hierarchy, the self-actualization will be at the top and the physiological will be at the bottom. And what most time, if you transfer the physiological, it really just means like some place that you sleep. That's basically what it referred to. It's right below that. So that would be at the bottom. Then safety will come next, where you're trying to make sure that you're safe. It's more than just somewhere you sleep. It might be a room, it might be your home rental. The belongingness means that you have a family, you have friends, you have a community that you belong to. Basically, your family member, you're married, you're not married, whatever that might be, that's the belongingness. Then once you pass that, you have the esteem, which means that you have probably made a lot in terms of your life, in terms of your work, in terms of other things. You have done a lot, so it's more esteem you're looking for. And then self-actualization is this place that you are in your life where you you're basically made all the money, made all those things, and you want your name to be recognized. You want to be recognized. You want to see your name on a building or something, but you want to be recognized in those areas. So that's what you're going to focus on in terms of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and those five areas basically try to depict that concept or characterize that concept in terms of where you are in that space and how do you motivate people according to those things. There are different types of reward system, and basically there are two types they look at. One is the intrinsic reward, and one is what we call extrinsic reward, which means that the intrinsic, as the word implies, is basically internal. It's associated with performance, performing the task for your own sake. You get this thing when you do it. It's not, you're not getting a car, you're not getting more money. You're basically getting something that you like. The external is the tangible and something visible basically that you get for what you put in. So given your performance, you get this tangible thing that you can touch and feel and own, basically. So what they're thinking of is join the organization, basically regularly attend their jobs, perform their jobs well, stay with the organization, a sense of accomplishment, and we're talking about intrinsic versus extrinsic, sense of accomplishment, feeling of responsibility, a chance to learn something new. Um, Basically, something comes out of it. It's fun, it's interesting, it's challenging, it's engaging. So the two things are made up slightly differently, but you get a reward from them. You get a reward from them. One is the external reward where you get a car, you get additional vacation, time, money. Next one is more internal where you are feeling good about yourself, feel like you have some responsibility, all those things. Um, the important reward system basically is talking about job vacation, job security, health insurance, learning new skills for intrinsic, internal, basically having your independent feeling of working on something. How do we motivate people with these basics concept? Well, normally you're trying to satisfy the lower order needs first. So if somebody is at the bottom in terms of this physiological, you try to satisfy that first. You ask people where, what they would like. Expect those needs to change because again, remember, people are growing, right? So people might start at the bottom, but they might not at the top. Satisfy higher order needs by looking for ways to allow employees to experiment intrinsic reward. Because when you're at the top, most time money doesn't motivate you anymore. When you're really rich, you're at the top. So it's more that intrinsic thing, how they feel good. Try to motivate them in that way. Try to satisfy that. There are some components of what we call equity theory, which means that we take a look at the input and the output and see how that ratio works. Basically, so there are three things that's going: the input, outcomes, and a reference point, which means reference. And basically, all that means is a comparison to others, right? So that output input ratio is the outcome of oneself over the input of oneself equal the outcome of the reference over the input of reference. Again, the reference is a comparison to others, right? So it's pretty simple to understand. And that is the components of equity theory. Um, People try to think of how to make these things not be inequitable. Basically, it doesn't affect the next person. So if in one hand you give something out and it's under rewarding, then you try to figure out what's going to fix because sometimes it might leave the person frustrated or angry, basically. So and the over reward, which means that the ratio is the reference rate IO ratio, which is the output input ratio, is less than yours, you start feeling guilty. So if your reference point is greater, basically you feel guilty. If it's under the what the current ratio is, then you feel a little bit angry and frustrated. Sometimes people react different to it. So your role is to try to reduce certain things, like you can reduce the input, increase the outcomes, rationalize the inputs or the outcomes, change the referent, or leave. So yeah, as a person, you're there and you're trying to figure out how this thing works, and you're making adjustment accordingly. So we can basically try to motivate with these theories by we look for and correct major inequities, we reduce employee inputs, we make sure decision-making processes are fair, procedural, and again, don't worry about these. These are more legal jargons, but just make sure that decision-making process is fair. Expectancy theory, we can motivate with what is a thing called expectancy. And again, these are economic terms. If you study economics, you know these things, but if you haven't, don't even worry about it. Just try to basically understand and the thing for the exam. So basically, for the expectancy theory, you are systematically gathering information to find out what employees want from their job, clearly link reward system to individual performance, and empower employees to make decisions which enhance that expectancy perception. So there's also what we call the reinforcement theory. Again, same thing. Don't read too much into it, but you can just basically think about that, not from the big economic standpoint, just what you see on the slides. Theory state that the behavior and function consequences, basically, you can read the rest of it, will occur less frequently. So again, all it means is reinforcement. So in a nutshell, what you're doing is if there is something happening, how do you either break it or reinforce it? So if it's good, positive reinforcement, right? It's desirable, you want to strengthen it. Negative reinforcement is not desirable, so you want to stop it. Punishment, basically, if the person is doing something really bad and you want to stop it, so the consequences weaken the behavior. And extinction, which basically means there is no consequence at all that can weaken the behavior. So either way, you just kind of just either stop it or let the person go. We don't need to look at the reinforcement schedule. We'll skip that one for the exam. So you can reinforce with motivate with reinforcement theory by identify, intervene, evaluate, analyze what's going on. Don't reinforce wrong behavior or bad behavior. Try to correct, basically, using the appropriate measurement or punishment and at appropriate time, and choose simple and most effective, basically, methods or scheduling processes for doing it. There's also what we call the goal setting theory. And again, all these things are just goal setting, right? They put these theory beside it because they're economics and it sounds fancy, but it's just goal setting. How do you motivate with goal setting? Well, primarily what you're doing is set goals for people and try to motivate them to meet it. There are different types. Make sure the goal is specific. Make sure the goal is not difficult. It's accepted, which means that everybody agrees on it, and you're giving performance feedback as you go along. So, specific. It's not the difficulty. Make sure how challenging the goal is. Make sure that it's within reason. It's accepted, so all parties agreed on it and understand it, and make sure the performance appraisal inform of your goal. So the performance appraisal feedback inform the goal. So we can motivate the same thing, motivate with goal setting theory, assign specific challenging goal, make sure workers truly accept the organizational goal, and provide frequent specific performance related feedback. So provide frequent feedback on it. And basically that covers chapter 13. Now we're moving into chapter 14. Chapter 14 is about leadership. There are different things we're going to look at in leadership. First, we want to take a look at the difference between, we compose them as leader, but there's a difference between managers and leaders. And leaders in this case, we're thinking of the CEO versus managers. What the theory says is that managers tend to want to look at and do things right, while leaders do the right things. Managers like to stick to the status quo. Leaders looking for change. Managers are thinking short term. Leaders are thinking long term. Managers look at the means, which means a means to an end, while leaders look at the end, Managers are builders, leaders are architects, and managers think more of a problem solving, leaders think more of inspiring and motivating. These are really critical one that you should basically understand for the exam. Just make sure you identify which one goes where. Who are leaders and what do they do? So there are different types of leadership traits and behavior. We're going to look at some. There are some traits that we think, and again, these are not always perfect, but just identify them for the exam fast. Usually they're self-confident. There's a sense of emotional stability, cognitive ability, knowledge of the business, have a certain drive to get this thing done, desire to lead, and honesty and integrity. So these are some traits that have been identifying leaders. Again, just point out that they're not saying this for every leader, they're just saying these are traits that they've identified. Let me see if we're covering some of these things in leadership behavior. So for leadership behavior, we can think more of the degree to which a leader structure the roles of followers by setting goals, um, giving direction, set deadlines, and assign tasks, which you're initiating something, and basically consideration the extent to which a leader is friendly, approachable, supportive, and shows concern for employees. So these are some behaviors that you can see. There's two different types. You get a sense of what they look like. In terms of we're going to skip some of these. So anything we don't cover in the class won't be in the exam. So we're going to skip some of these type of situational thing that's going on. So what I'm skipping, and again, I'll just usually just delete them from the slides. So there are leadership styles, directive, supportive, participative, and achievement oriented. So again, directive is just trying to clarify expectations and goals. Supportive, being friendly and approachable, same thing. Participative, allowing inputs from that, and setting goals, challenging goals, that's achievement oriented. So we think of certain contingencies that we would like in terms of locus of control and experience, task management, formal authority system, primary work group. These are just pretty straightforward, right? One is just the environment in which that you try to create a good contingencies overall, or leadership contingencies. The next one is how you treat your subordinate. What is the locus of control? What is the level of experience? When you say locus of control, it means how well the subordinate accept their responsibilities or not. Situational leadership. So in situational leadership, again, situational leadership just means that are you work ready on your leadership style? So primarily what it means is, so if you walk in an environment and you have done all your work so that you're ready to work day one, they're just saying that is a situation, basically. So it's a situation, means situational leaders theory and the leadership style. So worker readiness just means the ability and the willingness to take responsibility for basically directing one's behavior at work. So when you get to work, if you can take that responsibility, that means you're a leader. That means that's what they're saying. And the components of worker readiness is job readiness and psychological readiness. I mean, mentally you can deal with it, you can handle it, you're capable of doing it. There are some different things that they look at in terms of normative decision making, like decision making styles, decision making quality, or decision quality and acceptance. They're just laying down some, these are just how you make decision, right? What is a quality? When they say quality and acceptance, they just mean your decision that you're making as a leader, how good it is and how people actually accept it. So using the right amount of employee participation can improve your decision quality and acceptance. Using a decision tree, basically, which is, say if they have one or they don't have one, which is, as the word implies, a tree. And all what the tree does is identify certain places that you might go to and what are the contingency, so that you can find the optimal level of participation. And then go back, and they just talk about the normative decision making theory right here. So you can go through the strategic leadership. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. So a strategic leader, basically, again, remember, strategic is at the top. So you're talking about the C-suite again, but a strategic leadership is ability to anticipate, envision, maintain flexibility, think strategically, or use the same word, make sense, which just means think critically, um, work with others to initiate, to talk about initiating first, initiate changes that will create a positive future for an organization. So again, as you can see, most of them are linked, right? We just identify, um, initiate. Let me see how far back that is. Right, initiating structure and consideration. So you can see that things are linking throughout the whole process that you're going. Visionary leaders, vision leadership, charismatic leadership. So two types of visionary leadership, charismatic and transformational. And visionary leadership creates a positive image of the future that motivates organizational members and provides direction for future planning and goal setting. And you might ask yourself, how does that differ from strategic leadership? Well, as you can see, one is basically more hands-on in terms of anticipating and vision while still maintaining, while charismatic is more looking at the future and the vision and the image of the organization and motivate members to provide them some direction for future planning and goal setting. Charismatic leader basically creates an exceptional, strong relationship between leaders and followers. So charismatic leaders articulate a clear vision based on values, model values consistent with vision, communicate high performance expectations, and display confidence in followers' ability. So ideally, you can see that there's some overlap, right? There's going to be some overlap in leadership, but there are one or two things that makes strategic different from visionary, different from charismatic. You just have to identify what those are for the exam purposes. So there are different type of kinds of charismatic leaders. They're saying there are two types: ethical charismatic leader and unethical. What they found is that unethical sometimes control and manipulate followers, do what is best for themselves, only want positive feedback, motivate or motivated by self-interest, while the ethical one provide development opportunities, open to positive and negative feedback, recognize others' contribution, share information, and concerned with the interests of the group. So sometimes you can find a way to reduce unethical charismatic leader, which is basically have a clear written code of conduct, recruit, select, and promote managers with high ethical standards, train leaders who have values, seek and use a diverse point of view, and celebrate and reward those who exhibit ethical behavior. Then your transformational leaders, thinking about generating awareness and acceptance of group, purpose, or mission, gets followers to accomplish more than they intend or possible. Again, you can have one leader that has 3 or 4 of these traits going on, and or they potentially can just have one, but they can learn other ones. Just basically, these are just different types. And the same thing with basically transitional leaders. The same thing, people, their influence, their inspiration, their intellectual consideration, the same thing. So all of these things relate to leadership. They're overlapping in some sense, which is great. But at the same time, you have to identify the individual ones for the exam. But different people have 2 or 3 strengths that they might have. Doesn't make it, basically. So that's it. That covers chapter 14. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to again, just email me, send it out. We will discuss it and talk about this more. I will have chapter 15 up and ready pretty shortly.